Hi, I'm Victor Perton, and I'm the Chief Optimism Officer of the Centre for Optimism, and I'm also the good fortune to be a board member of Yarra Valley Water. And a couple of weeks ago, Roland Webber, who's another member of the Centre for Optimism, said to me, it's time for the utility sector to share its optimism in the midst of all the hardship and the bad news. There is so much good news going on, but also for us to share some of the tools, some of the tricks we use to maintain our optimism. So we've come together with the most brilliant group of leading speakers, and we're going to be asking them three questions. We're going to be asking them what makes them optimistic, what makes their team optimistic, and then what they've learnt through COVID that's going to lead them and their organisation to a better future. And then roughly, hopefully around the 35, 40-minute mark, we want to break you all into groups of 5 or 6. So you're all going to need to be unmuted and off video. So anyone who's not wearing a t-shirt, you'll need to put it on by about the 35 or 40-minute mark. And we're going to break you into groups of 5 or 6 to answer this question. What makes you optimistic? And you'll find that even in asking the question of each other, it's going to lift you. Then we're going to come back together and as a group, an open slather, questions and comments. And then at about 3 minutes to 2, you're going to have to lose your inhibitions because I'm going to lead you through 1 minute of laughter yoga. We've promised you are going to leave here laughing. And then we'll do a soft close with a thank you. And anyone who wants to keep chatting and the like can do so. And we've got people joining us all the way from the United States through to India. So we are a very mixed group of people. My suggestion is I'm going to keep looking at this in gallery view. So those of you who really like happy faces, gallery view is best. Those of you who prefer to see the speaker in sort of big print can use speaker view. But remember the check-in, looking at yourself in the screen, always make sure that the lips are curled up just that little bit. So keep checking in every few minutes. Am I smiling? Roland Webb, can I ask you to introduce our speakers and to ask them those first 2 critical questions?
Will do. Thank you for the introduction, Victor, and thanks everybody for joining us. So there's lots of people joining in, which is good to see. But I say a big welcome and thank you to our guests of honor, I guess, and I'll say hello to each one of you individually, starting with Helen Vaughan, Deputy Secretary of Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. Hi, Helen. Nice to have you. Peter Morrison, CEO of VicWater. Thanks for joining us, Peter. Lucia Cade, we've got the Chair of Southeast Water. Thanks, Lucia, for joining us. We've got David Middleton, Chair of Greater Western Water. Thanks for joining us, David. Soyun Punyadasa, Director of CMP, the Eternal Optimist. Thanks, Soyun. Eamon Kelly, I love your shirt, Eamon. The Are You OK? Perfect for next week. Thanks for joining us. Lara Olsen, again, thank you for joining us on especially late notice. Much appreciated. And then Mike Williamson, who I believe Victor referred to as a film director before, a movie star. Thanks, Mike, for joining us. And last but not least, Mark Gobbie from South Australia. So we've got South Australia and Queensland representatives. Thanks for joining us too. And look, I'll start with Helen. And Helen, I'll ask you directly the question. What makes you optimistic? And I guess also what has kept your team optimistic throughout this lockdown?
Yeah, thanks, Roland. So for those that I don't know, I have the pleasure of leading the Water and Catchments Group in the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. And on a work front, I'm actually constantly amazed by how innovative and creative and smart the people that I work with are. And I would actually extend that across the water sector as well. And I believe it's kind of intrinsically human, a human instinct to work together and to really overcome any obstacles that we have together. And I continually find new ways of working with my colleagues to manage around problems that are thrown up at us, whether it be around climate change, whether it be around the latest political issue that we're facing, whether it be around whatever it is. And that real commitment to shared delivery of good public service is that kind of golden thread that I see in working with my colleagues, and that makes me incredibly optimistic for the future. We know we've got challenges coming up, but I feel we're really well placed on a work front to kind of deal with that. And on a personal level, I have 3 children, and I have an almost embarrassingly large extended family, and I've got really close personal connections with a lot of people from their mid-teens through to mid-30s as a kind of direct result of that. And I see the next generation as being really socially aware and less individually focused and more community focused. And I don't know whether that's because of the cohort I see, or whether it's because of some of the big issues that are kind of spoken about in the media, whether it be climate change or whatever. I'm not sure about that. But what I see from my interactions is that there's a lot more consideration of the broader community rather than individuals alone. And that focus on, you know, public good outcomes and best thing for the community overall gives me enormous confidence and optimism for the future on a positive kind of personal level. Did you want me to go into how I keep my team optimistic, or do you want to share?
Yes, please. Absolutely, Helen.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks for that.
Great. Because I actually really love this question, and I spent a bit of time really thinking about what has actually happened on this kind of crazy COVID journey. Because I feel that the context that we've been working in, or that I've been working in with my team, has really changed considerably since the 25th of March 2020. It's ingrained in my brain from when we first shifted out of the office in the first lockdown. And since that time, I think my approach of keeping my team optimistic has been really adaptive and has changed over that time to really try to help provide the team with what they needed at any particular point in time. So what I mean by that is like I was the person that had my first plan to transition back into the office well and truly sorted by April 2020. And this obviously didn't happen, but it did provide my team some confidence and some hope that we were thinking and planning for what needed to change and how we were going to operate into the future, even in those very early stages. So it really helped people to go, okay, I don't need to worry about, you know, what's necessarily going to happen tomorrow, but I need to focus on, you know, what I can do right now. So that was helpful at that time. And then as things have kind of progressed, it's been more about building that resilience into the team and creating that sense of hope. And what I've noticed is, in order to keep my team optimistic, there are a few golden threads, as I call them, that are not necessarily earth-shattering, but nonetheless have proved invaluable to keeping my team motivated and optimistic about where things were going to go. And there were things like, you know, communicate authentically, really provide those avenues for my team to want to know how they are feeling and what tangible supports they actually need at a particular point in time. To really let them know that in a non-rhetorical way that their well-being is absolutely top of mind. And you know, this was shown by making decisions about how best to manage workloads, particularly when, you know, kids or other work pressures were in place during stage 4 restrictions. So that focus on the important work, not the busy work, and keeping their well-being in mind was really important for their keeping their optimism and motivation up. And as things have progressed, I use a term that I call realistic hope. We know that the pandemic is going to end. We know that we're going to find a way to live with things that are going to be different into the future. But at the moment, we just don't quite know when that's going to come. So, you know, I want to provide that sense that it's okay to plan for the future in your personal life or in your work life, and we've got to be prepared for that flexibility as well as things change. So realistic hope or realistic optimism is my term of the day. And I also found that one of my golden threads with my team was give permission to have fun. You know, we do a lot of serious stuff in the water sector. And, you know, when people weren't having those one-on-one interactions where they had the opportunity to eyeball each other face to face, you know, having that opportunity to socialize online for an hour or so, whatever it might be that suited their purpose. But it's okay to do that piece of human interaction just for the sake of it, outside of work was something that I was also really conscious of providing. So that's it, Roland.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Helen. I think a lot of people will agree with what you've just said. You know, it's general consensus around the industry and around the whole of Australia and probably even the world. Thanks for that. Over to Peter Morrison. Peter, what makes you optimistic and what has kept your team optimistic through these times?
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Roland. What makes me optimistic is the sunshine and the sunrise. Every sunrise reveals a brand new day, and every new day brings new opportunities that we can embrace. So I have a choice every morning as to how I want to frame my day. And when I see that sunrise and when I see that sun and when I see that fresh light, just reminds me that there's something that I can look forward to in my day. So that makes me optimistic every day, and I make that choice every day. As to what makes my team or keeps my team optimistic, there's plenty to be optimistic about in Victoria. There's plenty to be optimistic about with the Victorian water sector. When I see that there's over 100 people in this room, that's optimistic for me. And we serve, I think, a globe leading water industry with a real strong commitment to customers and the Victorian community. I mean, what more is there to be optimistic about? It's fantastic. It's such reliable water. The water's been provided during numerous events. We've potentially got a big event this afternoon in some parts of Victoria with storms. And even when we've had disruptions to our water, I've seen the industry move and form really great alliances with the community, with local governments, with emergency services providers, to the extent that while that was difficult at the time, it's actually brought new relationships and forged better bonds in the community. And it's given recognition to an essential service that is fantastic. You know, there's plenty to be optimistic about there. So that's all I need to say, I think, Roland. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Peter. Much appreciated. Now, Lucia, you're up. I believe you've got something to share for us. What makes you optimistic and your team?
Yeah. I thought I would focus more on what keeps me optimistic rather than makes it, because I know this is a smiley session, but I'm going to be the first one that admits that I have actually found it quite difficult to remain optimistic. So for me, it is a choice that I have to make, like you do with the sunrise, Peter, to choose what I'm going to focus on. And the way that I keep optimistic is by choosing to focus on the things that I can control, not the ones that I can't. So I'm not listening to the news, most of the news. I'm not following politics as a reality TV show. I'll keep a track of the numbers so that I can plan out the future, but that's about the extent of that involvement. So those things that I choose to spend my time on, in the sector are the spending time with the companies that I'm involved with, and VicWater is a really important one, and the water in for the things that, those projects that are really going to change, it sounds really Pollyanna, but the save the world ones. So, I love what the water industry does in terms of the service to community. I love the way that our team manages to focus on looking after our people as well as looking after the customers in hardship, and there's a really good balance there. But equally, we're developing some fantastic technology for improving the way that we do things. Lara can talk more about that. I mean, the logo behind me today, I'm in Geelong at Carbon Revolution. We've got a factory here. This is a business that came out of a 14 years ago out of a uni project that we make single piece carbon fibre wheels, advanced manufacturing in Geelong, exporting to the US and Europe. And it is, it is awesome. We're busy building a global Australian business. One of my others, we're looking at decarbonising the gas industry. It's cooperative research between industry and universities to create, store and transport green hydrogen. So they are the things that I focus on that keep me optimistic. And I find that if I maintain my focus on those positives, I don't have to worry so much about, the reality show that is how we're going to get through COVID. In terms of my teams, around the board teams in particular, so it's different to the doing teams, but what keeps the board teams optimistic is the way that we engage with our executives and our MDs to make sure that the businesses that we're in charge of governing are still doing well, that that we're tracking the wellness of the teams, that our people are coping, and we've got the right systems and structures and supports in place, and the same with the customers, but also that we are focusing on and finding enough time to focus on the strategic and the long term, and the next. Celebrating the wins, acknowledging what we're achieving and focusing on the future. And that's the way that around the board table that we're keeping optimistic as a team. Done.
Fantastic, thanks Lucia, and both you and Peter. I believe the choice we have to make to stay optimistic, and there are certainly days where it is hard, and again, I've got 3 kids at home, so certainly feel that we have to make our choices, and I guess the alternative isn't the best, so we always have to find something positive to look forward to. So thanks again. And next up, David Middleton.
Thanks, Roland.
You optimistic, and you.
I'll get to that question in a minute, but look, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you all today. What a fabulous turnout to see all your smiling faces on a Friday arvo. That's gonna ride me right into the weekend, which I must say I'm looking forward to with Father's Day coming up. Also, big shout out to a couple of my colleagues who I can see are on the line, Neville, Rowan and Jeff. Thank you so much for joining this group today. I'll tell you why you being here is so special to me. I want to talk about optimism within the context of Greater Western Water and what we've been doing there for about the last year and a half, culminating in our merge of City West Water and Western Water on 1 July. If I think about what was achieved primarily through lockdown by our people, I can't help but be filled by optimism. We put 2 organisations together, and Helen's there nodding her head going, yeah, I know David's going to make it sound like it was really easy. But it wasn't really easy. It was actually a hell of a lot of work. And it's an absolute credit to some people on this call today and the teams at both City West Water and Western Water to achieve that outcome on 1 July. And so we're now officially 2 months into operations, and it's going well. So right through lockdown, and Lucia, I acknowledge some of the things you've said as well. I've written about many of those things on LinkedIn, particularly lockdown 2 and now lockdown 6.0 or whatever we're up to. Finding that mechanism to only deal with what you can control and what's in your circle of influence, I think is a really strong message about driving optimism, both personally and also with your teams. So to your second question, Roland, what keeps our teams optimistic? And I suppose within this context, I see myself as part of many teams, but from a Greater Western Water context, I'm just part of a great big team of amazing people. And Marie Lang is our leader, and I'm sorry she couldn't be here today. To me, it's the opportunity around customer and community that keeps me optimistic. We've made some significant promises to the people of the West and the growing outer regions of Melbourne as we move into Sunbury, Bacchus Marsh, Melton, Woodend, places like that. We have promises we've made in terms of the levels of services we will provide, the infrastructure we will build, and the customer experience we will provide. So I'm really optimistic that we have achieved so many things during multiple lockdowns and during COVID, but as we return to some sort of new normal, that we can really start to deliver on those promises to our customers in a meaningful way. So that's getting me up in the morning, Roland and Victor. And I'm sure we'll talk about what I've learned from COVID real soon. Back to you, Roland.
Excellent. Thanks, David. And look, I guess being in the midst and having lots of your staff members, I guess, tied up in the West at the moment, you know, where Melbourne's been hardest hit, I'm sure there are lots of challenges within the team. So the optimism is very, very important to stay there. And it shows true leadership, I think, from Greater Western Water, what you've done. So excellent. Well done. Thanks. Now over to our eternal optimist, as I call him, Soyun. Always a smile on his face too. What makes you optimistic, Soyun? And if you've got a couple of stories to tell us, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roland. And as Eamon said before we came online, keeping Soyun to time is the issue. So I apologize in advance if I go a little bit ahead. But before I start, I just want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Victoria and Australia and pay our respects to them, their culture and their elders past, present and future. I want to say a quick story about the cool painting that's behind me. I know everyone's thinking it's pretty cool and I want to explain what it is. The artwork's actually from a friend of mine called Luke Penrith. Luke is a deadly and proud Wiradjuri man, lives in New South Wales. He's a cousin of a good friend of mine, Leon Egan. And this painting is actually so timely. I mean, he actually showed it to me yesterday and then gave it this painting and allowed me to show it today. It's titled Wings of Hope, and it's inspired by our lockdowns. We will get our wings back in time, and then we can travel and visit family. And that's the story. And you can see some turtles in the background, and the turtles represent just go slowly and get this right. And I think that's a good thing for all of us to remember. What makes me optimistic? Well, I think my optimism comes from my upbringing. My parents left Sri Lanka in the early 70s through particularly difficult times and relocated to Hong Kong, looking for a better life. They instilled a belief in me that actually it is a great faith that I have, that regardless of what's happening right now, the future is always going to be better than the present, always. And that the best is yet to come. This is what makes me optimistic. I want to share a story with you, and I debated this with Roland whether I should share this because it's deeply personal to me. I also have my wife and I have 3 sons. And when my 3rd son was born, he's just turned 9. He actually was born with a blood clot in his brain. And within 3 days, we had to have emergency surgery done at the Royal Children's Hospital. And I am deeply grateful to a great water professional named Paul Lowes, who was the asset manager at what was Western Water. He's retired now. He said to me, Soyun, hold deeply to the feelings that you have right now. Remember them, journal them. And then in 10 years' time, look back and see how your perspective has changed. He was spot on. I mean, that was one of the toughest times of my life. Little fella's now 9 years old, and I look back, and I've got 1 more year to do the proper promise that I did to Paul, but I will look back and I will see it as in a completely different light. And I think, and my wish and my prayer for all of us is that in 10 years' time, we'll look back to 2020 and 2021 and see it in a different light. I also firmly believe that you have to make the best of every situation. And I'm grateful and blessed to be working in an industry that has been so resilient through the pandemic. I want to share 2 funny stories, actually there are 3 stories. 2 are funny about optimism, and I've got approval from these people to actually share these stories. The first is from Charlie Littlefair. I think everyone in the water industry will know who Charlie Littlefair is. Charlie's a general manager at Southeast Water. In the first lockdown, I was actually in an ELT meeting with him, and there was just fear, general fear across the whole meeting about, are we going to proceed with works? Are projects going to come to a grinding halt? And Charlie just showed amazing leadership that day. He said something that will never, ever leave my head. He said, do you know what, Soyun? The government says you've got to wash your hands. And guess what? We're the ones who provide the water to do it. So it's all systems go from here. And he just lifted everyone. Everyone started giggling and carrying on. And then we said, yeah, we're going to keep going. And we have. So Charlie, thank you for lifting me up on that day. The other is also a funny, I think it's a funny story, is a gentleman from Melbourne Water called Paul Koish. He's the program team leader for construction and commissioning. He's a great character. And during lockdown, he was actually stopped by the police and asked whether his work was essential. And Paul is driving a company ute and is wearing a company logo and everything. And Paul's response was, I think, was a classic. He said, it depends what you think. Do you think drinking water is essential? And the witty as ever, the policeman sort of said, all right, hold on, off you go. So I think as funny as Paul was, he did share with all of us the essential nature of the business that we do. and the fact that even through a global pandemic, we cannot stop the great work that we do for our communities. And I really appreciate Paul's story, as it gave us all a lot of courage to keep on moving forward. So thank you so much to you, Paul. And last but not least, I want to share a story. I'm heavily involved in STEM awareness, both in the schools, the Year 10 Schools program that we run here at CMP Consulting Group, which is called Gems in STEM, but also I lecture at the Masters of Engineering course at La Trobe University. And thank you, Sanaz, as I see you are here today. I was asked to say something optimistic, actually, Victor, to our master's students. And all I did was state facts. And I said, the Engineers Australia has released an Australian employment vacancies report for the first half of 2021. And key takeaways were, the first half of 2021 has seen a 44% increase in engineering vacancies across Australia. Civil engineers, industrial, mechanical and production engineers, mining engineers, and ICT support and test engineers were the most highly sought after in the last 6 months. And the stat was a 35% increase for Victoria. So lots of companies are recruiting for talent. We are in a great industry. To pee or not to pee is not a question. Thank you, Roland.
Classic. Thanks to you. There you go. Brought smiles to a lot of faces then. Thanks for your stories, much appreciated. Hand over to Eamon. Eamon, what makes you optimistic and what has helped your team get through this COVID time? We're still on mute here, Eamon. See if I can unmute you. We can't hear you.
Somebody had to do it,
Here we
didn't they? Thanks, Roland. Yeah, look, when you sent an email out when we were preparing for this this event and asked us to think about this, and what I wrote down for that was you know, 3 things that make me optimistic: the strength and support of a strong and expanding family unit. I'm at a great time of life when you know, my kids have grown up and I've got little grandchildren popping out left, right, and centre, and it's a really great time, and that gives me a lot of strength and optimism for the future. The love of a good woman, and I did put a caveat on that that said, yes, it is my wife, for those of you who are questioning whether it's my wife or not. My wife of 40 years, and the passion and resilience of most of the people I come across in the water industry, which touches on what Peter was talking about earlier, and some of the other speakers today. But for me, I've always considered myself an optimist, although some people may see some of my moods, and I hold up my teacup that I'm carrying, which my daughter's bought me lovingly, you know, a grumpy old man. So you don't, I know, Victor, you're saying everyone needs a smile on their face, and that can be infectious, but you know, optimism isn't just about, you know, smiling and laughing every day. It's just a sense of being, and where that comes from for me is I've always felt that you know, from a young boy, I can make a difference in my own sphere of influence, and I took a lot of that grew in me through my sporting years. Always very a proud sportsman and very much a team player. You know, feeling that I could make a difference to the team, I can contribute to the team, and then in my professional life, always feeling that the job I was doing, I could do better. I could always move up, you know, within my career, and that's what's really fueled my career all through my life. So I always consider myself not quite the eternal optimist that just spoke before me. I think it take me a long way to catch Soyun up in terms of eternal optimism, but I am an optimist, and what makes my, you know, what keeps my team optimistic, as I said, you know, there's a lot of passion and a fair degree of resilience within my team. For me, I don't see enough resilience, you know, within our industry and the country generally, and it's something as leaders we always have to focus on building. And the only way to build that is better communication with our people. And if every leader just focuses on their sphere of influence and makes that communication, you know, as powerful as it can possibly be, in terms of the level of support, counsel, mentoring that we do every day, you know, and in every conversation we have, you know, it's within you to make a difference, to make people feel better, to make people feel that that they can be optimistic as well. in these difficult times. You know, a lot of people take a lot of knocks in these difficult times, but the support of the people around them can help incredibly. And so we do need to keep encouraging that. That's from me, Roland.
Fantastic, thanks, Eamon. And yes, Soyun and myself had a good laugh when you sent that message through and made sure that we understood it was your wife. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And also about the resilience. Look, I have seen a lot of resilience in this industry, and one thing I've seen is that people actually really care, and I think that makes a huge difference. You know, everybody cares, and everybody knows each other, and everybody looks after each other. So that's been fantastic. And thanks again for joining us and sharing your story. Now over to Lara. I know Lucia hinted that you might give us a little bit more information when you talk. So what makes you optimistic, and your teams, yeah, that I guess are similar to Lucia's teams?
Thanks, Roland. I do consider myself an optimistic person, but realised I hadn't reflected on why until this session. So thank you for posing the question. And I think the good news for some of the people on the call, for me at least, was it's actually an advantage of middle age. I realised that the two reasons that make me optimistic are looking at people younger than myself and people older than myself, and particularly the courage of youth, and I think Helen spoke to that, and then the wisdom that comes with experience. And I think in terms of youth, I see that both in my life and also at work. And sort of one outside of work recently, people might have seen the Olympic boxer, Harry Garside, and he wore nail polish. And it's not that he had a particular interest in nail polish, but he's like, I'm a plumber, I'm a boxer, I'm an Olympian. And I want to challenge what the stereotype is around all of those things. And so I want to challenge what is taken to be a category, or what's taken to be an Olympian. And I look at youth and I can see them pushing on all of those old characterizations that we had about what a good leader is, or what a good engineer is, or what drives some of those racism and sexism that we see in our environment. And that gives me a lot of optimism. And I think it's the same sort of pushing of boundaries and questioning that I see in work. You know, one of our young engineers came up with a foot-powered hydrant, and it's because he started thinking about how could things be done differently. I think that gives me a lot of energy. And then on the other side, it is the wisdom that comes with experience. I was talking to one of our team members who's been with VicWater, or its different formations before that, the Melbourne Board of Works, for 40 years. And just in hearing him talk about what's changed in that time and his perspective, it really reminded me, and I wrote it down, you know, to be less focused on what the quarterly results are or what this means in this particular week, and more focused on that perspective. And I think it's something I'm really enjoying and getting a lot from in interacting with traditional owners as well, just about that breadth of time, that breadth of perspective, and not focusing on particular outcomes in the short term, but what it means to care for country or care for waterways. And I think that's given me a lot of optimism at the moment as well. And then in terms of my team and what brings them optimism, I think there's sort of three threads to that. The first one I'd say is each other. You know, like other organisations, we've put in different support mechanisms, professional ones, but it's really been team leaders that have gone above and beyond, that are juggling their own homeschooling or other circumstances, but have spent time with our people to help them juggle their circumstances. And it's been humbling. What makes me really proud of the people that are in the water sector, to see the care for each other. I think the other one that people have talked about is the care for customers. I know when COVID first started, and maybe like others, we were shifting our call centre out and didn't quite have all the technology right. The focus of our people on making sure that they could serve customers despite the dog barking or the kids in the background is, again, another reason for optimism. And I think the third one that some people have touched on as well is being prepared to talk about not being optimistic. So I feel like the nature of our conversations have become a lot more honest across society in these last 18 months as well, about being able to say, actually, I'm not feeling optimistic today, and to Eamon's shirt, that's okay. And we can talk about that. And I think if we can hold both and appreciate both, then it really gives us the chance to have the best optimistic outlook we can.
Fantastic, thanks, Lara. And yeah, your passion certainly came through when you talk, and you can certainly feel that. And I think everybody else would have on the call as well. So awesome, thanks. Now over to Mike Williamson. Now, Mike shared a story with us that Victor published yesterday. Some of you may have read it, but Mike, over to you. Please tell us what makes you optimistic. Share your story with us. It's a really great story to hear. And in relation to your teams and who you're working with, how do you, keep people around you optimistic as well?
Thanks very much, Roland. It's terrific. I was a bit worried being number 8, but then I'm ahead of Mark Gobbie, so at least I can get one over him. I wrote a few things down, but I've actually abandoned it because I've heard so many good stories that I want to just think about some of the things that the people who've gone before me have said. And Peter, you mentioned something about the sunrise makes you optimistic. It made me think, what happens when an optimism walks in a room? They lighten the place up. It's like someone's turned a light on. I'm very, very fortunate that I've got a daughter who actually celebrated her 40th birthday just the day before yesterday, which was also my last day as a board director of Unitywater. And she's one of those people, when she walks in a room, it lightens up. Conversely, of course, we also know that when people who are not so optimistic often walk in a room, it's like someone's turned the dimmer switch down. And that's why I said in one of my notes is the thing that I really have to focus on is not going to any more school reunions. Because if you want to hear about how things are going well and how poorly the government's doing, it's just listen to people of the older generation. Sometimes, not all the times, and certainly not the people on this call. Lucia talked about the way we need to control what we can focus on what we control, and let those things that we can't control, let someone else care about them, because we can't do anything about it. So that's how I certainly stay optimistic. I focus on those things that I can influence or that I can manage or I can control, and those other things that I can't, well, I'll mitigate against them and do everything I can, prepare for them, but I certainly won't try to control them. What really, really makes me optimistic, though, when I start to feel my glass is getting anywhere near half empty, is that I just need to talk to some of the younger people in our water industry. I've been in the water industry for almost all my life. And before that, I was a ship's engineer, so I was involved with the water even then. But I just need to talk to some of our young water professionals or hear what they have to say. And I am completely buoyed and completely optimistic. There is nothing I need to be concerned about, because I think the future is in good and safe hands. I think the other thing that makes me optimistic is the continuing focus on innovation. Whether it's in our industry and other industries, there is so much focus on being innovative and making changes, and particularly in a time when we need to focus now, especially in the times we're in, those changes make me optimistic all the time. So we do have challenges ahead of us, but wow, there is no reason not to be optimistic about them. So the things that I think keeps the team optimistic, Lara, I think you were talking about customers. I do remember one of the things that we did in the early days on our board at Unitywater was talk about the fact that, well, we would really needed to wind back some of the things we were doing. And then we stopped and thought about that and decided that was exactly the opposite of what we needed to do. So in terms of infrastructure contracts and service agreements and those things, we have a responsibility not only to our customers, but to those people who support us, our contractors, our service providers. And if we stop, they stop. It's like if we stop talking about the good things that we're doing, other people are going to stop as well, which is probably a reason to shout out for recycled water as well. We must never stop talking about that. Lara, you also made a comment about nail polish. It reminded me of a story. I was at a board meeting the other day, and one of my shareholder directors, and this was at a concept board meeting, he said to me, "Mike, I can't take you serious while you've got nail polish on your hands." And I looked at my fingers, and my 5-year-old granddaughter had really got stuck into me with the turquoise nail polish, which lasted about another 5 days. And I actually quite like it. I'm thinking about wearing it more often. So they're the things that make me optimistic. leading by example, walking the talk, showing that you mean what you say. They're the things that keep you and your team optimistic. Making sure that your culture stays the way it should be. It's an old hackneyed phrase, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think they're the things that keep us optimistic. Thanks again, Victor and Roland, for organising this. And a big shout out to all my concept colleagues that are online.
Thanks for that, Mike. Much appreciated. And yes, certainly it sounds the same themes are coming through. Innovation, we've heard it a few times, and the young people in the industry. So certainly lots of things to look forward to. Thanks again, Mike. And look, last but not least, Mark Gobbie, leave it up to you to round us out. What makes you optimistic and your teams? And you told me you've sort of thought about this beforehand, so here you go.
Thanks, Roland, and hi, everybody. So when Roland said to me this morning that I was going to be the last speaker out of 9, and we'd all be talking for about 5 minutes each, and I looked at the group of people and I thought, I've got to be an optimist if I think I'm actually going to get to talk at all. This is the hour's going to be done. These people can't talk for 5 minutes, but look at the time. You know, we're 40 minutes in, 8 speakers, 5 minutes each. So good job, everybody. I do think, I guess the other reason, the other thought that went through my head when I was thinking about the other speakers too, about being 9th, is how can I say something different? And you know what, I'm not going to try. There's been lots of really good stuff said, and some of what I'll say will be other people have said as well. But, you know, I do agree that optimism's a choice. It's something that you process in your own mind. You look at every situation and you look at the way that you can manage that and move forward. And that is an inherent choice that we've all got within us on every single decision that we come across every day. One of the reasons I know that that's the case is in the last 12 months, I've actually started playing quite a bit of golf. And to play golf, you've got to be an optimist. Let me tell you, you've got to believe that no matter how bad your last shot was, your next one can be better. And I think that's the definition of life, really, isn't it? You've got to believe that the things that have just happened to you, you'll put them behind you and you move forward, and you'll look at life in a positive way, and that you'll bring everybody along the journey if you do that. And I think that's what optimism and leadership is really about. The water industry, and what I'm about to say now, but people have touched on as well, but you know, I had this view of the water industry way before COVID. I've worked in this industry now for over 40 years, and I've often reflected about why it's such a damn good industry to work in. It's just full of really good people, and I think there's probably a couple of reasons behind that. One is it's actually a small industry across the country and across the globe. I mean, you look at the number of faces that you know on this call from people all over Australia and all over the world. So it is a small industry. So the thing about a small industry is you're actually, you know, a competitor one day will be your partner the next day, will be your boss the day after, and will be working for you the day after that. So the one thing about that sort of dynamic situation is you just better bloody behave the right way, because you're going to be found out if you don't, you know. And that has shown through in the last 12 months. The way the industry has responded, I think, has been absolutely fantastic. What helps me motivate teams? Teams like getting things done. If I think about probably one, I'm involved with a number of teams, but the one I'll talk about is Water Research Australia, where I took over as chair of the board from Sean Cox in October last year. And I look at what we've achieved in the last 12 months. In fact, I said at the last board meeting, you know, in the last 12 months, we have completely reset our strategy. We have redone the Constitution through a member voting process in a two-step process. We have delivered on a business plan, and we've done all of that as a group. And you know, we've actually never all met face to face. In fact, some of us have never met. So I think that is a huge, as a group, I think that's a huge achievement. when you look at some of the things the organisation has been involved in, and I know many of you are very familiar with this, but the COVID testing within the wastewater system, Water RA was one of the key participants in that program, and to pull together water utilities all across the country, and to pull together health organisations and the whole lot into a overall coordinated response is just magnificent. And I know we've been successful because when you hear premiers and prime ministers and head of police departments talking about the COVID results from sewage sampling within their local catchments, you know, we've got to be doing something right, don't we? So, so I think achievements and reinforcing those achievements and making sure that everybody in that team that was part of it feels that achievement is what keeps teams successful. So that's it. I might have gone for a little bit longer than anybody else, but over to you, Roland.
Look, thanks very much, everyone. 9 fantastic stories. Absolutely awesome listening to everybody, and certainly one common theme. Yes, we've gone a little bit longer, probably, Victor, than we anticipated. So I'm not sure if you still want to do the breakout rooms, but I'll hand back to Victor for now, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you. Look, I think it's really important. We've had such, as people have said, we've got such a huge group of people gathered. What I'd love to do now, if everyone's happy, is break you into groups of about 6 for 6 minutes to share what makes you optimistic. We broke out into groups for 6 minutes, and as I understand it, the 20 or so groups found it vibrant and exciting. Well, look, I hope everyone, we've still got people coming back, so wait till everyone's back, but I hope you all enjoyed that. Hopefully meeting new people and enjoying the conversation. And that question is so evocative. We've heard people today with grandchildren and workforce and inspiration and innovation. So now what I'd like to ask, and we just close all the rooms. There's some people who don't want to come back. They're having so much fun in the rooms. I think they've pushed the buttons. So look, what I'd like to ask of you now, this morning I did an event for the Jewish community. As you can imagine, with lockdown and not being able to go to synagogue and to have family gatherings for New Year, they were very devastated. So Jewish Care and I did an event this morning. I had the most wonderful blessing from their lead rabbi, but we also had Ros Ben Moshe, who teaches at La Trobe. Those of you who are at La Trobe might know her. She teaches the Laughter and Wellbeing course. So if everyone can, in a very ill-disciplined way, switch on your video and unmute. I know it's always very difficult when we've got so many people, but I want you to unmute. And when I go to the count of 3, I want you to look at the screens. Anyone got teenagers? Yes, Peter. Peter, what's your daughter's name?
Get the kids in. Lacey.
Peter Houston, what's your daughter's name?
Lacey.
Lacey, can you count to 3?
Ready?
So when Lacey counts to 3, we are going to laugh hysterically for 1 minute. Make sure you're on gallery view so you can see everyone else, and I want you to laugh hysterically. Ready?
Wow.
Lacey.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Oh my goodness.
I knew we had to stop. You can see my face has gone red and my ribs are hurting. Lacey, has your face gone red too? Thank you for that, Lacey.
You have an infectious laugh, Peter.
Anyone who didn't have kids on the line, make sure you do that with them tonight. Thank you so much. This has been, I am uplifted. Thank you to our sponsors, Concept Environmental Services. In their case, this was a passion because, as I said, Roland has been a member of the Centre for Optimism since we began. And can I throw it back to you, Roland, to thank our special guests, to thank everyone, and take us to a soft close.
Look, as Victor said, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to our panelists. It was awesome to listen to all the stories. Thanks for Victor to organising this with us. But as Victor said, we have got time. We're going to keep the line open. So if people want to have a chat, ask some questions and stay on, please do so. If you need to leave us, and I know a lot of people have dropped off, I think, once the panelists finish, but we still got over 70 people. Look, we had 118 at the peak. That was absolutely fantastic. And it just shows, you know, people do care, and it's great to see. It's a great industry to be in. So thanks again, everyone. Much appreciated.
Love the glasses, Victor.
Well, we hope you loved that session, and I think there's a demand for more sessions. And if you'd like to get involved with the Centre for Optimism, we'd be delighted. Sign up for a free newsletter, or alternatively, take a paid membership or even a corporate membership or a sponsorship, and we'd be delighted if you could do that. In any event, have an absolutely superb day, and wish you a very optimistic year ahead.